just don't know how to work chokers. Pretty sure I had the same exact problem like 3 months ago. Still haven't fixed it, still don't know how to do it, so. Oh my god, I'm about to give up on this one. What's up, y'all, and welcome to my first installment in my internship series. This one is going to be my story, how I got my internship with IBM, and kind of the steps I took to get there, and then my later ones are going to be more of a how-to and my general tips, my insider tips, I guess, for you, that I feel like I didn't necessarily use all the same tips that I saw everyone else giving. So I want to share those secret ones with you guys, and those will be in my later videos. But today's topic is all about how I got my internship at IBM in their summit program as a client relationship representative. So I wrote all of my notes down in this top half of the page because I know that I'm a storyteller and I tend to talk a lot. So I figured if I have some bullet points to keep myself on track, this video shouldn't be too long. With all that said, let's go ahead and get into it. So I feel like first, the two important things are to talk about my background, like what I'm studying in school and stuff, and then what the program that I was applying to is. So let's start off with my background. And I think I'm gonna do a whole other video on like where I go to school and like my life in general. But I am a junior at college and I'm studying industrial and systems engineering, which at my school at least you can lead to a lot of different tracks. And I feel like the easiest way to describe my major to those of you who might not know what it is that it's all about efficiency in all various aspects of life. So basically you take mathematical theory and thought and apply that to real life situations to solve problems. You can go into things like logistics and supply chain, like with FedEx and figuring out how in the heck they get your package to you from all over the world in like 1 day or 2 days. Or you can go the technical consulting route, which is probably more what I'm going to be leaning towards. It's more of a people forward job. So blah, 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 blah. I am industrial systems engineering major. I have 2 minors. One is in business administration, and then I'm also getting a sales engineering minor because I want to go into a people forward or client facing career after graduation. That is my background and what I'm studying and all that good stuff. Now this internship is within the IBM Summit program, and I will leave a link down to their website below to explain it a little bit better, but it's essentially basically like consulting and selling IBM's various tools and such to all different businesses, specifically with different APIs surrounding Watson, which is their artificial intelligence. I could talk for hours about AI and Watson and IBM and all that stuff, but I don't want to bore you guys. It's essentially a consulting internship slash sales internship. So it's consulting and sales, which is what I want to go into in the tech industry, which is what I want to go into. That is why I'm very excited about it, and that is my background and the info on this internship. So now let's get into the actual nitty-gritty story of how I got this internship. The first step for me, like any other internship, was the application. I actually hadn't heard about this internship before. I mean, obviously I've heard of IBM, but I had never heard of the Summit program or even that they had those types of internships. And so one day I was at work at the Princeton Review. There was an old territory manager, and his name is Ross. He was actually stopping by the office one day to help me out with some stuff because they were transitioning between old manager and new manager and blah, blah, blah. It happened to be the week of career fair. And so he was asking me like, oh, like how was it going? And all that stuff, and I was like, you know, there's a couple companies that I'm really excited about. There was one really big company that I was dying for, and I made it to first round interviews and application, but then I didn't make it past the first round interview, so that was really disheartening. And that happened to be around the time that I was talking to Ross. Also, my mouth is so dry, so I need some water. Give me 1 second. Much better. Where was I? Essentially at IBM, there's the Summit program, and there's the internship level, and then there's the employee level. Ross was actually currently training in the actually employee program, and he was like, you know what? Have you heard of the IBM Summit program internship? This video is already 10 minutes long and I haven't really got into it, so I think I'm gonna do my best to kind of skip over the details and just talk about the actual application process with you guys. So to summarize, all throughout this entire like 3 or 4 month long process, Ross, who was my initial connection to IBM, my biggest cheerleader, I guess you'd say, throughout the whole process. You guys can find some sort of inside, obviously, in any job search or internship search. Having an inside connection is gonna do you really amazing things. So Ross was kind of my go-to guy. Okay, so now to the actual application process, how I got to work at IBM. Gotta consult my notes so I stay on topic here. The application wasn't anything more than normal. This IBM internship was kind of like all the other ones that I'd already done. At this point, I think I had applied to like 8 or 9 or 10. So this was like my 9th, 10th, or 11th one that I applied to. And it's just like an online thing. It just asks you for like your name, your address, very basic information, your GPA, and then the 2 places where you can shine. And I'm gonna try not to give advice in this video because I'm gonna make a whole separate video on all of that. But the 2 places to really shine in those types of instances, because the application doesn't really allow you any space to give you personality, is your resume and cover letter. So I made sure that my resume was top notch. I made sure that my cover letter was top notch, that I consulted Ross on both of those. He gave me some critiques and I fixed the issues that he saw, and then I applied. And then I guess what happened after that, I didn't hear anything for like 3 weeks, and then I got an email saying, congratulations, you made it past the first round of applications. So the first round out of 4 was essentially just a screening process where I guess they read your cover letter to see if they liked you, and then did basic things like look at what curriculum you've taken, look at your GPA. So I got that email, and then in that email it was like, for the second round, basically in this application process, we need you to take this assessment. So I asked Ross, you know, what is this assessment? How should I prepare? Because essentially in the email it was just like a little link, and it was like, click this link and it'll take you to the assessment. Set aside 30 to 45 minutes in a quiet place so that you can get it done. I think I had a week deadline to get that done. The assessment was essentially to gauge how you would work in a business environment so that they could kind of see less about the scholastic side and the GPA side, which I think is what the first round was, and more about like who you are as a person, kind of. I was expecting it to be a question and then paragraph answer, but when I logged in, that's not at all what it was. It was like a set of 100 questions, and for each question you had 2 statements, and then for that question you had like something like 15 seconds to answer, and you had to pick on a scale of like neither, a little more me, the most me, a little more me, the most me, kind of like that kind of scale, which of the 2 statements most resonated with you or was most like you. Sometimes it would be easy, like sometimes it would say like, I prefer working in a group of people, or I prefer working by myself, and then you would just pick which of those is more you. But some of the statements weren't polar opposites and were harder to pick, like I find myself struggling in a work environment because I don't like being told what to do, or I struggle in a work environment because people don't listen to me. So like those are still opposites, but they're both negative. So I got a little bit psyched out, but all in all, I guess obviously it ended up working out. So that assessment was like essentially the second round of this application process. And then I think like another 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even maybe a month went by before I heard anything else. And then I actually took the initiative to follow up with the recruitment manager, which is something very important that you guys should do. But again, I'm gonna make a whole video on advice and that sort of thing. And that's when I got an email back, I think about like 2 or 3 days after I sent my follow-up email saying, congratulations, you've made it to face-to-face interview round. So this is now the 3rd round in this application process. And at this point, I think I applied back in like October, and I didn't get the yes confirmation until last week, aka like the end of February, the beginning of March. So it was a pretty long application process. But this was my first like person-to-person interview where I was gonna be able to interact with someone from the company, and it was a webcam interview. So I got the time and the date of my webcam interview set up, and I, cleaned the back of my room. So I got all dressed up and I had my 3rd round interview, and I was told in that interview that the way it worked was this 3rd round interview was with what they call a summit program hiring manager. The hiring managers were essentially in charge of deciding whether or not you had like the IBM spirit, whether or not they saw you in the program at all. That's what that interview was. So I remember the interview started, and my interviewer, let's call him like Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott was like, okay Amber, like don't worry, this is gonna be a super casual interview. Like I could see him, he was like leaning back in his chair like this, and he was just in his office kind of swinging around, and he was like, don't worry, it's gonna be casual, it's gonna be great. And I was like, awesome, great. And then his first question to me was, what did you do to prepare for this interview? That is never a question that I've gotten in any other interview. So I was caught a little bit off guard, but I just told him the truth that I watched a lot of Ginny Rometty, who is the CEO of IBM, and she is a crazy strong woman in STEM. She's like one of my low-key idols. So I just told him like I watched a lot of Ginny Rometty's speaking engagements on YouTube. I read the 2015-2016 financial status report. And then he asked me a few questions about my resume, and then a lot of leadership experience questions, leadership oriented questions. This whole interview, webcam interview, was about an hour long. The first half hour of the interview was the like traditional, tell me about yourself, what are your strengths and weaknesses, that sort of thing interview. And then the second half, he said, all right, Amber, that's all I have for you. Do you have any questions for me, or like anything you want to talk about? And since I was like so obsessed with all of the things that IBM is doing, especially with Watson and artificial intelligence and that sort of thing, I did have questions. I asked for like his take on what the next market that artificial intelligence intelligence was going to impact, because they've already partnered with like the healthcare industry, the education industry, and so many things like that, and just demonstrating my knowledge of what IBM is doing, but phrasing it almost as like a question. So that second half basically of that interview was just conversational, just talking about IBM, getting really excited about IBM. And at that point, I remember my interviewer, Mr. Scott, saying, you know what, Amber, like there's nothing really that I could say I see wrong with you, and I think you're a great candidate. And I got like really excited at this point, and so I just asked him about what the next steps were. And that's when he told me I would be getting an email after this interview within the week saying whether I was going to continue to the next round or not, but that even if I did continue to the next round, the fourth and final interview, which is what was in my birthday vlog, is with a host manager. That interview was with a hiring manager who decides if they want you in the program at all. And then if you get chosen to move on to the fourth round, they ask for your preferences on location. So my preferences were, I preferenced New York City, New York first, Atlanta, Georgia second. My third preference was Dallas, Texas. So New York, Atlanta, and Dallas are the three locations that I preferenced. And so moving from third round to fourth round, about a week after my third round interview, I got an email from the IBM Summit hiring team saying that they had a continued interest in my application. So that was basically an email that was like, so essentially the hiring manager was like, yes, we want Amber, put her in the pool of applicants. Then for this fourth round interview to happen, host managers will look at your application, look at what third round interviewer said about you, and essentially they'll say, I want her at my location. And that was the longest part for me. I remember I got the email saying that they had continued interest in my application on January 20th. And it said that I would hear back in 30 days if I was able to be paired with a host manager. It comes to be February 19th, aka 29 days since I got that email, one day away from the 30-day mark. I sent an email out to the general HR email that I found on the IBM Summit program website, and I sent an email to every single person that I'd interacted with thus far at IBM. So at that point, I think I sent out around 7 emails, including the person that interviewed me for the third round and all the different hiring staff that had been in communication with me up to this point. 3 hours after I sent off those emails, I got a response from one of the hiring staff saying, yes, we'd absolutely love to interview you again. Can you give me your availability? I was so excited, and I was like, heck yeah, heck yeah, heck yeah. I sent them my availability. I waited and I waited and I waited, and basically what I had told them is that in the upcoming week, I was only available on that Friday, and then I was available like all the next week. So in my head, I had just assumed that it would be 2 weeks from then when I was available like the whole week. But I didn't hear anything, I didn't hear anything, I didn't hear anything. And then I actually got an email at 6 p.m. on Thursday of that first week, but I didn't see the email until 9 p.m. that they had scheduled me for an interview that Friday at 3 o'clock. So less than 24 hours they gave me. I was a little bit nervous, but also very excited. So I was scheduled for an interview with the Atlanta host manager. Let's call her Mary. This interview was drastically different than the previous one. Well, first of all, it was over the phone and not webcam interview, and it was only half an hour instead of the whole hour. The reason it was so different is because in this interview, they asked me two interview questions. That's it. Like, Mary only asked me one question about my resume and then one question, kind of like a workplace situation. That took up like maybe 5 minutes, and then the rest of the 25 minutes of our conversation was just the conversation about the company, about myself, about her. Not that my first interview wasn't conversational, because it was, but this interview seemed to not be an interview. It literally seemed like just chatting with someone. But now looking back on it, I'm pretty sure it's because like at that point in the interview process, like the host manager already knows that you'd make a great fit at the company, but they want to see if you make a great fit in their team. So I think that's why it's just like a personality gauge. But me and Mary hit it off, so I was really hopeful. That was on a Friday. And then the weekend went by, and that Monday I got an email saying like, hi Amber, I just wanted to be the first to let you know that we're putting together an offer for you, and like you'll be getting an email later this week, blah, 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 blah. But at that point, I was a little confused because I didn't know if that meant like they were still thinking about it or if I was actually getting the offer, which now like I know I was getting the offer. But that Wednesday I got the official call and the official email of the offer to work as a client relationship representative at IBM for the summer. And that is how I got my internship at IBM. So excited, you guys. Like, I literally can't even explain to you how excited I am because I'm so passionate about just all the different things that IBM is doing, especially with Watson and all the different APIs. So that's it for this video. Hit the thumbs up button if you like this like storytelling kind of situation. And don't forget that I'm going to be doing an internship series, so stay tuned for that by subscribing. I'd love to have you guys stick around, and until next time, I'll see y'all then. And also I plan on vlogging my entire internship experience from moving to Atlanta to the actual internship, if I'm allowed to. I'm not really sure what the rules are in the office quite yet, and kind of like a post follow-up video. But you guys will see all that. I'm just so excited.